Happy Artifacts Friday! Today we're going to talk about the prehistoric artifacts that were found on site. These include the prehistoric ceramics and lithic debitage, otherwise known as stone tool fragments. They were likely deposited sometime before 1733, and they were found on the land of Parker Plantation, just outside of Savannah. They were likely deposited by Native Americans who lived and possibly hunted the land surrounding the plantation and on the plantation. These artifacts were found scattered throughout the site underneath the historic ground surface. The picture you see here shows the lithic debitage, or stone tool fragments, in the first two rows, and the ceramics in the third row. These are all the ceramics and all of the lithic debitage, or stone tool fragments, that were found in the entire site. This is a very small collection of prehistoric artifacts, which makes us think as archaeologists that the Native Americans were probably only hunting this actual site, and they could have lived or hunted in and around the area, and likely hunted at one point in time on this site. Women would make the ceramics. Here is some Pueblo women shaping the pottery. The pottery would typically have the shape and the sort of clay inclusions would help us figure out the time period, as well as decorations being used. And decorations were usually used to kind of signify an area, a region, or a family. To give you some context on the pottery, here's a little chart describing the time periods in prehistoric cultures of Georgia. We have the Paleo Period, that was from 10,000 to 8,000 BC. The food was mainly big game and berries, and they lived in non-permanent structures and were highly nomadic. They used a spear and primitive weapons. There's really no discussion of the type of rituals or religion in this period. And during this time, the first humans came to America over the land bridge. And then it's followed by the Archaic Period, 8,000 BC to 10,000 BC. They were hunting at this time small game, deer, bear, fruits. They were eating vegetables that were foraged, not farmed for the most part. They had semi-permanent structures with wood poles and hide, and they used spears and atlatls. And there's some burial of their dead with items suggesting they believe in life after death. And they traveled in small groups or clans at this time. During the Archaic Period, approximately 3,500 BC is when pottery started being created. These pieces that we found on Parker Plantation could date to some time between the Archaic and Woodland periods. It's really hard to say because these are very small pieces, and there's no decoration on them, and the temper is really hard to see. So sometime between, we're assuming with the temper or the inclusions in the clay, that these ceramic pieces are coming from the Archaic or the Woodland Period. And to talk about the Woodland Period is 1000 BC to about approximately 1000 AD. And they were hunting small game, and fishing, and it was the first use of seeds at this time. And they had sturdy houses that were built in villages. And also, the development of the bow and arrow started at this time. There was more rituals and more ceremonies, and burial mounds started to be used. And so during the Woodland Period, we have 3 sites here in Georgia. We have Rock Eagle, Fort Mountain, and Kolkmogi. If you ever can do a field trip, I would check out these 3. The Kolkmogi is very, very important to Georgia prehistory and has 7 mounds there. Then we go into the Mississippian period, which is the year 1000 to 1600 AD. 1600 AD is basically when the settlers were coming in regularly. So that's when the pre-contact period starts, or ends. So they were hunting deer and turkey and small game, and they started doing organized agriculture and growing beans for the first time during the Mississippian period. There were large permanent settlements arranged in small towns, and the major weapon was the bow and arrow. They were using large mounds for ritual purposes and ceremonial purposes. And the chiefdoms were led by one person, and they were traded amongst people. The important sites during this time are Etowah and Okmulgee, which you should definitely check out. They're in Cartersville and Macon, and that would be a fun field trip to check those out. They're really great to see how Native Americans used to live here in Georgia. So yeah, just to reiterate, the pottery that was found was likely between the Archaic period and the Woodland period. Now to talk about the stone tools. So the Native Americans, predominantly men, but some women, would make these stone tools, and they would use a hammerstone as this man is holding here, and they would create points to put on a spear or a bow and arrow, as you see here, and they would flake the stone to make it as sharp as they could in order to hunt animals. So here at the Parker Plantation area, we found these flakes of what the stone tools, from these stone tools. And they're made of 3 different categories of stone. There's the coastal plain shirt, which is found in the center of Georgia along what we call the fall line. Here in yellow are the areas where the quarries have been discovered by archaeologists where they got the stone to make stone tools. Then we have the metavolcanic or rhyolite, which is highlighted in black, where the possible quarries could have been found. And then we have quartz, which is sort of along the coastal areas in McIntosh and Long counties, have been reported quartz-bearing counties. But quartz really can come from any of the riverbeds, since it's old stone produced from river cobbles.